He stands apart from most of his generation in having embraced the tradition of Milosz, Szymborska, and Zbigniew Herbert. Of course, those three poets were very different from one another, and Różycki is just as distinctive himself. But what they all share is a sense of moral responsibility, a sense that a poet has something to say which bears on not just the individual, but society at large. Różycki shares with Szymborska a certain gentle humour, which is perhaps more particularly Polish than Szymborska's, because it is more rooted in local particularities. With Herbert, he shares a sense of deep irony, and with Milosz, a sense of the power and relevance of history. Not just the history of a family or nation, but the history of a poetic tradition. He has inherited Milosz's commitment to deep, schooled, and I mean that word in the Irish bardic tradition, craft. Colonies, which in translation was shortlisted for the Griffin Prize, is a sequence of over 70 sonnets. This collection, the Book of Rotations, consists of 88 poems that follow an invented form of 2 8-line stanzas. Most of Różycki's books function as organic wholes rather than assemblies of independent lyrics. But yet a strong lyric note is struck in the book's individual components. Różycki's family was displaced from Lvov after the war and resettled with half of Poland in what had been Prussia. His book, 12 Stations, deals with that fact, touching on his family's individual experience, employing the lore of forebears to comment on recent Polish history, the place of the Catholic Church, the pain of exile, the sense of a lost homeland, etc. If it were not for his humour and irony, the Irish poet he would most resemble, I think, is Thomas McCarthy, for his deep interest in how the fortunes of an individual family are so intertwined with the development of a new state. But also, like McCarthy, he has other concerns, such as many poems on love. Would you please welcome Tomasz?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick, for this invitation and for this beautiful introduction. It's for me the first time here in Cork, and I am very happy. And first time in front of this beautiful audience also. And I'm very happy, but I'm in the same time a little bit nervous because it will be my first reading in English. English is not the language I learned in the school. I just start to pretend to talk English. So let's forgive me my pronunciation of the poems, and when you hear some strange words that you don't understand, let's pretend that I am calling my Polish friend with a strange Polish name. So I will start by the first poem from this collection, Colonies, which is translated into English by Mira Rosenthal, and the translation is very good. And the translation won a few prizes, and I'm very happy to have such a translator. And it's a pity that she isn't here and she couldn't read the translation, but I will try my best. Coffee and cigarettes. When I began to write, I didn't know that poems would transform me, make me into a very ghost, constantly sleep-deprived, with see-through skin, roaming the streets as if to ride some kind of high, and only came down with ruddy dawn. The light finding me still out wandering and dropping in on friends, flat broke, a louse, a vermin, summoned by a flash of naked skin or just a sigh. And how was I to know what all these damp poems would turn me into, darling? And that you would summon me to life, that you would make me visible again, in bed, beside you, waiting till you fall asleep. Ants and sharks. An ant devours a larva, echoed with nature, and a child then eats the ant. It burns on the tongue. Curiosity always burns. On Paradise Beach in Goa, a shark will eat the child. But when God sees, he will catch the shark, just as he grabs a rat, a tigress, elephant. The poet in his room will then eat God. He'll feed, alas, on everything. Like a boar, the monster bloats and excretes. He feeds on paper, but if you let him in, he'll find the trace of dreams and love hidden in the sheets. He will steal what's holy, chew it up, grow pasty flesh and toxic fur. It's enough to touch him or brush by an accident. Oysters and dates. So, tell me, what do you prefer? We have fruit, cheese, wine, seeds. We have some herbs and these womanly streets, hot masculine July and Krakow, some light. Behind us, an age both marvelous and shocking. Before us, a stage for the still more marvelous, still more shocking. We have three kinds of lives from which to choose. We can be rich and happy, or be happy but poor, or only happy and all money be done. I'm asking you about it now as corporations fall apart. Displays and empires became tarnished. Soccer legends start falling out. The time has come for all of this to change, to go a little mad. Her Majesty Fleet. I played along up, maybe some few words. Excuse me, a few words before the poem. It's a poem about a computer game, a strategy game called Europa Universalis. I used to play many years ago, of course, and I tried to play Poland, but as you know, it isn't possible, because when you start to build something, every 10 years there is some kind of invasion. German invasion, Russian invasion, or both Russian and German invasion. But when I look at this artificial intelligence running the game, I think that now in politics we are run by some kind of artificial intelligence. This is Her Majesty's Fleet. I played alone against my own computer. I was the king of some poor country stuck in Central Europe that became a world power because of my sound politics and trade, strong army and economy. I never fought a war except to preempt enemy aggression or fight the weak, since there were nations that were badly run. I counted on the government, the courts enforcing laws, the navy, colonies. I was revered in diplomatic circles and among my subjects. I never sentenced without reason, except for public enemies, deserters, poets, traitors, profiteers. A poem about when I start to read some American novels, I had this thought that probably not only Columbus discovered America. One moment. Maps. Freud discovered America. It was night, and he had traveled for a month inside a freighter's hold with 3,000 freezing refugees from dusty towns in Central Europe. Nothing but puking for a month. What till then was hidden came to light. Once quarantined and cleansed, at last they set their feet down on the promised land, purged. Dry shod they had crossed the ocean. Now their skin determines how they will be recognized and paid. It's also big, banks, theaters, cars. Now they must eat their fill at last, be full. Freud had a dream that he discovered a new land, till then not on the map, and now it will not fit. This one is about the television. The volcano. Sitting and watching planes wage war against the towers, martyrs wage their holy war against commuter trains and gyms, against children. Then lying down, watching the flood in life's installments, using the remote to put the world in order, browsing, trying to dodge the murderer, the shark, and learning results from viewer surveys on the death penalty, dozing a little, taking in a little of the great pawning of God, and seeing everyone so tiny and cartoonish, how they fall, get up, and fall again. Then turning off the sound and picture, turning off my breath, my heart would not turn off. I felt. Excuse me. Some mistake with the numbers. All my poems are with numbers, and then there is still some mistake. Military exercises. Imagine for a moment that I live right here, was born here, but my parents always have had a shop here, and on Boulevard du Temple there is bistro with a nice young waitress. I'll be there. Imagine that there's no such thing as Eastern Europe, no cellars for hiding neighbors, no transports, no roundups, never any dreams of going from house to house. For a moment, suppose it looks like this. A cat stretches its neck in sunlight on a porch. A secret game of chess unfolds between the waitress and that guy. He tracks her moves. She brings him coffee, and as if by chance her hip jostles the ball. The next poem is about my trip to Ukraine, and was searching for the traces of my family there. It was a very, very tragic moment during the Second World War there, with many victims, Jewish victims, Polish and Ukrainians, and I couldn't find any traces, and I wrote this poem. Scorched Maps. I took a trip to Ukraine. It was June. I wandered in the fields, all full of dust and pollen in the air. I searched, but those I loved had disappeared below the ground, deeper than decades of ants. I asked about them everywhere, but grass and leaves have been growing, bees swarming. So I lay down, face to the ground, and said this incantation: you can come out, it's over. And the ground and moles and earthworms in it shifted, shook. Kingdoms of ants came crawling. Bees began to fly from everywhere. I said, come out. I spoke directly to the ground and felt the field grow vast and wide around my head. Headwinds. When I began to write, I didn't know each of my words would bit by bit remove things from the world, and in return leave blank spaces, that poems would begin to take the place of my own homeland, mother, father, first love and second youth. And what I write would fade from this world, trade its solid being for unstable existence, turn to air, wind, tremors, fire. And what my poems touch on would freeze in life and crumble into small particles, nearly turn to antimatter, completely invisible dust, spinning in the air a long time, till finally falling into your eye, making it start to water. Poem called Medal. How did this happen, us going crazy together, and now we are lying in this trampled grass, that buzzing and humming. The world turns round its huge body. This era's screams and laughter. A jet divides the emptiness in squares. Our winged children circle high above, and with your hand you shift the clouds. It's clear till Sunday, then a front is coming. How did this happen? Us going crazy together, love poisoning us with verdant venom, in dense grass lying stones on each other. What happened to time? That hangman and his tools, chains, digits, numbers. A pair of crazy fools, one sound, two letters. It was you I chose, and they obligingly replied that I could go mad with you. The acacias are in bloom, which is all I have as an excuse. This one is called Tropical Hurricane. Of all philosophers, I like the one who said that waves originate from gods equivocating. Is this known word good, or is it bad? Is this the time for seas to flood it? Every day love saves us from extinction. Gods equivocate and stroll about, and skip flat stones across the waves. The sun at the horizon sinks to sea. I walk the streets, and those who wash the sick walk with me. Those who are willing to kill walk with me. Every night a beast comes out to look for children in the evil city. There is dark in me as well, a drop of light. I leave black footprints on white surfaces. Third planet. A river twists the rusting crown of light above the bank, a meadow burned by winter breath. I come here on behalf of this world form, its stunning trait that never does it. It wants to keep the next day in quite the same dress. Beyond the shore are chimneys altering the heat, a sash of smoke above the grass, a spider's web in which we wait. This evening, in the ground are 5 huge cisterns to amass all time evaporated, most acute today. The river turns away, flashes, and in one fell swoop steals half the sky, the color in your eyes. This evening, only stars, skulls on lash and leg. To get in a single package consciousness plus mortality, what a joke. I say this in the dead of winter, on the 3rd planet from the sun, spinning within the abyss. And the last one will be the governor residence. When I began to write, I didn't know what I was really choosing and how much they paid. that I would become so quickly rich that anything I'd want could soon be mine. The women and the cities of my dreams, that I would travel when and where I want, in winter or in summer, go where I happen to point on the map, without a suitcase, straight from bed, without my pants. I'd settle in a fishing hut in Greece, and someone would bring wine and olives daily, and day by day my fortune would increase, and daily I'd stock up on chocolate, butter, that would sit there, for I would feel no hunger. Thank you very much.
Can we assure Tomasz that for his very first full-length reading in English he did extremely well?
Yes.
Tomasz has 3 collections available in translation. The one for Mira Rosenthal, published by Zephyr Press in the United States. Jidi Majia is a Chinese poet of minority ethnic origin, but he is while he's of minority ethnic origin, he is of major poetic origin. He's very much admired and respected poet in China and abroad, where they do more translations than we do in the English-speaking world, I guess. He belongs to the Nuozo group of the Yi people. The Yi are linguistically related to the Tibetans. The Yi live across China, Thailand, and Vietnam. Unlike the Tibetans, they have their own Aboriginal shamanic religion, animist in nature, but more organized than most animist religions, with an established priesthood. One of their most interesting beliefs is that an individual can possess more than one soul. So at death, one soul remains to guard the body's grave, while another is reincarnated. Majia's poetry is very much connected to the land and spiritualism of his people. He has written with affection and concern for his native language in Chinese, an irony many Irish poets will appreciate. He will read tonight in Chinese, and we will project simultaneously English translations on screen. I would add that in addition to the poems you witness on the screen tonight, it is very worthwhile. I recommend highly you seeking down a collection of poems published by the University of Nebraska Press of Jidi Majia. So would you please welcome Mr. Jidi Majia.
I'm very happy to meet all these friends here tonight.
我想在一次见面最重要的一个缘分，是因为诗歌跟我们相聚在一起。
One of the biggest reasons why we meet here is that poetry unites us all.
那么实际上，这个世界上有很多壁垒，就像很多墙，但是我想，只有诗歌能消除这些壁垒，能让我们彼此走得更近。
There are so many walls in this world, but I believe poetry can break these walls and bring us close and together.
那么中国人讲究缘分我们彝族人很讲究缘分。这个现在这个地球上这个人口已经差不多要接近80亿了。其实我们在这个地方见面是不容易的。
We Chinese people pay a lot of emphasis on luck, on fortune, and we Yi people also do. There are so many people all around the world, so it's a very rare chance for us to meet here tonight.
那么中国有一个智者说过，好像是人要在一起见面的话，这个缘分必须要50年以上。所以我觉得我们在座的这些人都有50年以上的缘分。
There was a saying from a Chinese wise man that for two persons to meet, they must have been together before for at least 50 years. So I believe now I meet you here, and we actually have met for 50 years at least.
所以我非常珍惜今天晚上和大家的见面。
So I cherish this opportunity so much.
谢谢。
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 雪的反光和天堂的颜色，这是门的孕育过程，是古老的时间被水浸洗的痕迹。这是门，这是门，然而永远看不见那隐藏在背后的金属的叹息。这是被火焰铸造的面具，它在太阳的照映下弥漫着金黄的绢羽。这是门，这是门，它的质感就如同黄色的土地。假如谁伸手去抚摸，在这高原永恒的寂静中，没有啜泣，只有长久的沉默。那是鹰的眼睛，不，或许只有上帝才能从高处看见，在这金色的原野上，无数的生命被抽象后所形成的斑斓的符号。遥远的迁徙已经停止，牛都在倾听小草的歌唱，一只马匹缓慢地移动，牵引着一丝来自天宇的光。蓝色，蓝色，还是蓝色，在这无名的乡间，这是被反复覆盖的颜色，这是蓝色的血液，没有限制的流淌，最终凝固成生命的意志。这是纯粹的蓝宝石，被冰冷的燃烧融化。这是蓝色的睡眠，在深不可测的潜意识里看见的最真实的风暴。风吹拂着，在这苍丘的高空，无疑这风是从遥远的地方吹来的。只有在风吹拂着的时候，而时间正悄然划过这样的季节。当大雁从村庄的头顶上飞过，留下一段不尽的哀鸣，此时或许才会有人目睹，在那经幡的一面，生命的开始诞生，而在另一面，死亡的影子已经降临。你的雪山之巅仅仅是一个象征，它并非是现实的存在，因为现实中的雪山，它的冰川已经开始不可逆转的消失。谁能忍心为雪山是一片悼词？为何很少人听见人类的忏悔？雪山之巅反射出幽暗的光芒，它永远在记忆和梦的边缘浮现。但愿你的创造是永恒的，因为你用一支抽象的画笔揭示并记录了一个悲伤的故事。那是疯狂的芍药跳涨在大地深处里最强的部位，那是云彩的导引，把水的词语书写在紫色的疆域。穿越沙漠的城市，等待河流的消息，没有选择。闪光的秋叶摇动着羚羊奔跑的剑士， 疾风中的毛流，冰川时期的化石，只有紧紧地握住手中的法器，占卜的神之才会敲响预言的皮鼓。你告诉我，高原的夜空，假如长时间的去注视，就会发现肉体和思想开始分离，所有的群山、树木、岩石和白银般剔透，高空的颜色变化莫测，隐含着暗示，有时会听见一阵遥远的雷声。我们都不知道什么是最后的审判，但是当我们遥望着这样的夜空，我们会相信创造这个世界的力量确实存在，而最后的审判已经开始。谁看见过天堂的颜色？这就是我看见的天堂的颜色。你肯定地说，首先我相信天堂是会有颜色的，而这种颜色一定是温暖的。我相信这种颜色曾被人在生命中感受过，我还相信这种颜色曾被我们呼吸。毫无疑问，它是我们灵魂中的另一个部分。因为我开始想象天堂的颜色，就如同一个善于幻想的孩子。我常常闭着眼睛，充满着感激和幸福，有时泪水也会不知不觉地夺眶而出。河流，阿霍洛伊，你这深沉而黑色的河流，我们民族古老的语言曾这样为你命名。你从开始就有别于这个世界其他的河流，你穿越我们永恒的故土，那高贵庄严的颜色闪烁在流动的水面。你流淌着，在我们传颂的史诗中已经有数千年的历史，或许这个时间还要更加久长。我们的祖先曾在你的岸边栖息，是你那甘甜的乳汁让他们遗忘了漫长征途的艰辛以及徐徐来临的倦意。他们的脸庞也曾被你忧伤的灵魂照亮。你奔腾不息，在那茫茫的群山和峡谷，那仁慈宽厚的声音就如同一支歌谣，把我们忧郁的心抚慰，在渐渐熄灭的火塘旁。当我们沉沉的睡去，潜入无边的黑暗，只有你会浮现在梦中，那黑色润雨的光芒将把我们所有的苦难和不幸的记忆都全部一扫而空。阿赫洛伊，我还知道，只要有一人生活的地方，就不会有人不知晓你这父亲般的名字。我们的诗歌赞颂过无数的河流，然而对你的赞颂却比他们更要多。移动的旗子，相信指头，其实更应该相信手掌的不确定，因为它的目扫并不只对自己。那手纹的反面，空白的中间，或许只在夜晚相信手掌，但手臂的临时颠倒却让他猝不及防，像一个逝者。相信手臂，可是身体别的部分却发出了整容发聩的声音，因为手臂无法确定两个同样的时刻。相信身体，然而影子的四肢 并不具有揉碎灵魂的短斧，相信思想复兴的影子的四肢，相信核心的躯体抵达可怕的深渊，不对比的高度定牢了残缺的器官，相信自由的意志在无限的时间之外，未知的事物被形系，没有唯一，只有巨石上深刻的山。相信吹动的形态在第四维星群神秘的间隙，只有多或少黑暗的宇宙布满鲑鱼的文字。相信形而上的垂直，那白色的铁，可是谁能证实在人类的头顶之上没有另一只手，双重看不见的存在，穿过金属的齿性，沿着肋骨的图案，再把旗子操纵更黑的水里移动。耶路撒冷的鸽子，在黎明的时候，我听见在耶路撒冷我居住的旅馆的窗户外，一只鸽子在咕咕的轻哼。我听着这只鸽子的叫声，如同是另一种陌生的语言，然而它的声音却显得忽近忽远，我甚至无法判断它的距离。那声音仿佛来自地底的深处，又好像是从高空的云端传来。这鸽子的叫声苍凉而古老，或许它同死亡的时间一样久远。就在离它不远的地方，在通往哭墙和阿克萨金身寺的石板上，不同信徒的血迹从未被擦拭干净。如果这仅仅是为了信仰，我怀疑上帝和真主是否真的爱过我们。我听着这只鸽子咕咕的叫声，一声比一声更高。哭吧，开始哭，原谅我，人类。此刻我只有长久的沉默。致尤罗夫阿提拉。你是不是还睡在静静的马罗斯河的旁边？或许你就如同你曾描述过的那样，只是一个疲乏的人，躺在柔软的小草上睡觉。一个从不说谎，只讲真话的人，谁又能给你的心灵以慰藉呢？因为饥饿，哪怕就是神圣的泥土已经把你埋葬，但为了一片温暖的面包，你的影子仍然会在索尔托巴吉寻找一片要收割的成熟的庄稼。这时候我们读你的诗，光明的词语会撞击我们的心，我们会这样想，怀着十分的好奇，你为什么能把人类的饥饿写到极致？你的饥饿不是干瘪的胃吞噬的饥饿，不是那只饿得咯咯叫的母鸡，你的饥饿不是一个人的饥饿，不是反射性的饥饿，是没有记忆的饥饿。你的饥饿是分成两半的饥饿，是胜利者的饥饿，也是被征服者的饥饿，是过去、现在和将来的饥饿。你的饥饿是另一种生命的饥饿，没有饥饿能去证明饥饿存在的本身。你的饥饿是全世界的饥饿，它不分种族，超越了所有的国界。你的饥饿是饿死老的饥饿，是发疯的铁勺的饥饿，是被饥饿折磨的饥饿。因为你的存在，那磨快的镰刀以及农民家里怒灶中 熊熊燃烧的柴火开始在沉睡者的梦里闪闪发光，原野上的小麦掀起一层层波浪，在那隐秘的匈牙利的黑土上面，自由的诗句正发出叮当的响声。尤若夫、阿提拉，我们念你的诗歌，热爱你，那是因为从一开始直到死亡来临，你都站在不幸的人们一边。我雪豹选段献给乔治夏人。流星划过的时候，我的身体在瞬间被光明铸造，我的皮毛燃烧如白雪的火焰，我的影子闪动成光的箭矢，犹如一条银色的鱼消失在黑暗的苍穹。我是雪山真正的儿子，守望孤独，穿越了所有的时空，潜伏在岩石坚硬的波浪之间。我守卫在这里，在这个至高无上的监狱，毫无疑问，高贵的血统已经被祖先的谱系证明。我的诞生是白雪千年孕育的奇迹，我的死亡是白雪轮回永恒的奇迹。因为我的名字的含义，我隐藏在物和爱的最深处，我穿行于生命意识中的另一个边缘。我的眼睛的底部绽放着呼吸的星光，我思想的珍珠凝聚成黑黎明的水滴。我不是一段经文刚开始的那个部分，我的声音是群山战胜时间的沉默。我不属于语言的天空悬垂着的文字，我仅仅是一道光，留下闪闪发亮的纹路。我忠诚的诺言不会被背叛的词语书写，我永远活在虚无编织的界限之外，我不会选择离开，即便雪山已经死亡。Thank you.
Could you tell us perhaps why you choose to write in Chinese and not in your native language?
因为我出生的时候，我们彝族地区就是用双语教学，而我的家庭嘛，这个既说汉语也说彝语。更重要的呢，是我这个开始写诗的时候，尤其是我在读下大学的时候，也是中国新诗非常繁荣的一个时代，所以也是参与当时很重要的中国现代新诗发展中很重要的这样一个阶段的成员，所以写汉语也是一种自然的选择。
When I was born, when I was born in this Yi region, I was born to a family that speaking both Chinese and my native language, Yi language. And when I went to school, both languages were taught at the same time in school. And one of the most important reasons why I choose to write in Chinese instead of my native language is that I started to write during the blooming stage of Chinese modern poetry, and I believe after all these, using Chinese as my writing language is a natural choice.
当然需要说明的是呢，彝族是一个非常古老的民族，我们这个文字也是持续了1-2千年了。那么在中国的原生文字里面，可以说汉语和彝语都是最古老的文字。那么作为我个人，当然这也是一种幸运。作为一个诗人，是很长时间是游走在两种文字之间，因为我想任何的思维都是语言的思维，所以对我个人来说，无论是用汉语写作， 还是用彝语写作，特别是用汉语写作，那么也是和很多纯粹的汉语诗人还是有很大的区别。彝族是一个非常古老的、有着诗歌传统的民族。实际上，我们的彝族诗人，当然也包括中国其他少数民族的诗人的汉语写作，实际上是对汉语诗歌，特别是在它的深层的这种语言的这种变化中，其实是一种最重要的补充。
Of course, I'd like to say that Yi language is actually a very ancient language that owns a long history. Both Yi language and Chinese has a history of 1,000 to 2,000 years, and they both belong to very ancient civilization. It is very lucky for me to be able to walk in between these two languages, because as we all know that mind is actually closely linked to language. So I believe with this long tradition and history of Yi language, I can write poetry today. And I also believe that Yi language and the languages of other minorities in China are a very important complementary and element to the Chinese language overall.
那么现在在中国呢，有很多这个少数民族诗人，当然也包括彝族的诗人，还是用自己的母语在写作。那么在我们彝族地区，现在有一些用母语写作的这些诗人，那么他们的诗歌实际上也呈现出一种新的面貌。那么也在这种新诗的写作的这种现代性过程中，也表现出他们很独特的那样一种美学判断和他们的诗歌价值。当然，另外一个呢，就是在整体的中国现代诗运动过程中，那么汉语的书写也是一部分少数民族诗人他们涉猎的实验的这样一个领域。那么这方面实际上也形成了这种共生繁荣的中国当代的这样一个新诗的这样一种格局。
And in China nowadays, there are actually a lot of poets from ethnic groups writing in their native languages. And there are also some young people from my nation, Yi Nation, writing poetry in Yi language. And they are actually presenting new perspectives to the overall picture of Chinese poetry and presenting the value and the value of the different poetry and from an aesthetic perspective. For many poets from ethnic groups, writing in Chinese is actually an experimental behavior, and I believe with their experimental behavior and explorations, we are actually contributing to a very big picture of Chinese poetry.
另外呢，就是我们现在的写作，包括我个人的写作，那么实际上是很重要的一点，还是把自己的民族的这样一种诗歌的传统，包括对自己的养育了自己的土地的这样一种神话性的写作，实际上对于我们来说，这个可能对一个诗人来说，是他可能只要活在这个世界上最重要的一种写作源泉。
For me personally, that writing about my nation and about the mythological origins that contribute to my poetry is one of the most biggest motive for me to write and to compose poetry.
实际上，作为跨语言的学习，或者是对整个世界文学的交流来看，像伟大的诗叶芝，也给我们这样的处于 特殊文化地带的这样一些诗人树立了光辉的榜样。
And from the perspective of multilingual language exchanges, I'd like to say that the very well-known poet like W.B. Yeats is a very important model for poets like me from a very special background.
Thank you. And Tomasz.
You want to ask me the same question?
Tomasz, is it an involuntary compulsion to produce book-length organic sequences? Or is it a deliberate choice to do so? Can you ever envisage yourself again producing a collection of independent, unconnected, sovereign lyrics?
Yes, I hope I will do that because my last book is composed by 99 poems. So the friends are joking that the next one should have 111 and so on and so on. So I hope to compose, for example, 44 or 33 or something like that. To go down a little with the numbers, or just wait for an anthology of poems as normal poets do. So it's, yeah, I know, but it's for me it's a question of I'm searching for form every time. So for me, I need a form to make a book, to start to write a book of poems. So it takes me sometimes 5 years to find this form. It's in particular it's a for example sonnet or these 2 stanzas or 8 lines, and or the first line. The first line is very important for me. For Colonies, it was when I began to write, I didn't know. For a book of rotations, it was the man who bowed the world. It was after the song, of course, of David Bowie, the man who sold the world. I thought, what if I change this sentence for a man who bowed the world? And then for the last collection, it was another line which repeats in every few poems, and it's like a whole long poem who is divided on sequences and cycles. And when I find this line, it starts to work by itself. I think I had in my head in this time a little machine which is turned on, and it is working and working and working, and I'm going around repeating to myself, talking to myself, repeating the sentences, the stanzas, and adding one poem to another. So after 6 years of break between the books, I have one book like a real graphomania. I mean, in a few months, it's ready because it was in my head, and I was waiting for a form, for good form.